Welcome to this time out with Marcus Ekure. Yeah, we are bringing your way Inspire Me segment of our TV show. And this Inspire Me segment is actually designed to inspire young people out there, with the stories of successful people, people who have actually made it from grass to grace. And today we have with us, on set, a very wonderful and amazing personality, a distinguisher who has distinguished himself amongst other distinguishers. I'm talking of no other person but Engineer Dr. Emmanuel Audu-Ohwavborua. He is the director of NDDC, that's Niger Delta Development Commission, Delta State branch. Welcome to this program.
Delta State Office.
Oh, sorry, Delta State Office. Welcome to this program, sir.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Nice of you to have me on this program.
Oh, yeah, that's nice. Sir, you are a man of many parts, and you've achieved so much today for yourself, and you've done so much for society. May we know a little about your story of life, your life story, please?
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on this program. I like the theme, Inspire Me. Well, my name is Engineer Dr. Emmanuel Audu-Ohwavborua. I'm a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. Well, Marcus said my success story. I've not seen myself as a success yet.
Wow.
I'm a work in progress by His grace. I was born way back July 8, 1965. I was born in this Niger Delta. I was born in a village, then a village called Eku, in Etiop East local government area of Delta State. Now it's a town. Thank God for that. I was born in one very special hospital, which was then called the Eku Baptist Hospital. The hospital still stands today. Even now, it's now owned by government. It used to be owned by the Baptist missionaries. I was born there, and I had my early life between Accra, Ghana, Kumasi in Ghana, actually not Accra, then Eku, and then Abraka. And eventually, at about 5 years old, I went to Sapele. At Sapele, I started primary school and finished primary school, and also did secondary school. And also by His grace, I did A-levels at the then Federal Polytechnic Yola, which is now Federal Polytechnic Mubi, and worked for some time, and then went to University of Ibadan, and I studied electrical engineering in University of Ibadan. And there is some little twist, because it sounds so fluent, but it wasn't that fluent.
Okay.
I remember quite vividly when I did common entrance. I actually did common entrance from primary 5 because I was exceptional in the school, academic-wise. And then in those days, if you did well in the common entrance, you will be invited for interview in the Federal Government College, those unity schools then. I was invited for interview at Federal Government College, Warri. And I went for the interview, and I was admitted and given a list of, the school fees was almost free then, but there were a list of the things you needed to buy to be able to move into the hostel, because all students of Federal Government College then had to be in the hostel.
Okay. And
so I took this list to my father, of blessed memory now, then Malam Roma Audu-Ohwavborua. He looked at it and said, my son, you passed. So yes. And then he looked at the list. And then the next thing, he called out to my elder brother, Chief. It's also of blessed memory. It was Blessing Ohwavborua, my eldest brother then. And my father now asked him, the secondary school you are attending, what is wrong with it? Why can't your brother go to that secondary school that you can be going from home? Long and short was that the man did not have money to send me to that federal government college because of the things that we needed to buy. And eventually I settled down to attend Audu-Ohwavborua Grammar School. In Sapele, which was actually my first choice in the common entrance examination. Oh. I was #1 in that school then. And then I finished, but it was tough. My father, this interview is not about my father. Of course. He tried to give us a good life, good education, but he could only do what he could do. He had 4 boys in a row. He had 6 girls first, and then 4 boys later. 10 from 2 women. And then I was the last of those boys at that time. So it was challenging going to school. I had to be day student all through. Even at Form 4, I remember my maths teacher then telling me you have to be in the hostel so that you can be either senior prefect or one of the prefects. But I said, it's not my call. My father says he doesn't have money. And so I didn't go to the hostel, but in class 5, it was compulsory to go to the hostel. So I went to the hostel in class 5, 1980. Turned out that first term, second term, third term fees, I couldn't pay. Oh. And the school fees was very little, but the hostel, the boarding fees was 70 naira at that time. My God. And so the 3 terms accumulated, I couldn't pay. And about 6 weeks to the WAEC examination, the principal went around, entered our class. I was in 5A, and the first time in all my 5 years in the school, I was flogged. The principal used to have this telephone wire. Late Mr. Omokoro, that was his name, and he flogged me. When the cane beat into me, that whip, I saw stars, and I looked for the next escape, which was a window. I jumped it and ran off. And I ran straight to Sapele Market from Audu-Ohwavborua Grammar School then. Ran all the way to the market. Then my aunt then was able to give me some transport fare, and I went to the village to Abraka, where my mother was. And with that uniform, I ran away with the uniform, just uniform. I stayed in Oria for 2 weeks, going to farm with my mother on a daily basis to farm cassava, which we eventually convert to gari and take to the market to sell.
While school was running?
While school was running. Wow. To be able to raise that money. At the end of the 2 weeks, we couldn't raise half of the money. My mother had to go to some of those meetings she belonged to borrow the balance and give to me, and I went back to school. And I was able to write that WAEC, and actually came out this Division 1 in the WAEC, and also got admission to go to study civil engineering in University of Ibadan, 1980. Wow. Now, my father died as soon as I left secondary school. We couldn't pay those fees because most of those period was in the hospital. They were taking him from one healing place to another. Okay. He was sick. He was sick. Okay. I didn't see him till eventually we took him to Lagos, Lut, and eventually we brought him back to Sapele General Hospital, and he died. Okay, so I lost him, but I managed to. I finished secondary school before he died. And I couldn't go to university because there was no way I could have gone. So I had to pick up a teaching appointment, taught for about a year, and then proceeded to Yola on a scholarship. Okay. And I did OND then, OND in instrumentation. Wow. Came back 1983 and got a job at Sapele Power Station. And I worked for the next 3 years to enable that my elder brother graduate, because he was in the University of Nsukka, then University of Nigeria. You were the one sponsoring him? I was the one sponsoring. My God. And then he graduated in 1985. And by 1986, I did JAMB again to go to University of Ibadan. This time around, it was electrical engineering that I chose. Oh. And So it's not, there was a time I gave a talk somewhere, and some of the young men said they didn't know who I was, but they just felt I was a successful person. But by the time they heard my story, there has been God's hand upon my life, because I can recall when I was in class 3, I started seeing a vision of myself in an office. This is like a quarter of that office in size. I was seated, I saw myself well dressed. As in Form 3, seated on a chair with a very long table, and I would roll the table from one end to the other, doing work. I kept seeing myself.
Oh, you were mental photographing it.
Yes.
Wow.
And it turned out that vision helped me and prevented me from dropping out of the university, because in the university it was tough. My brother, that I was hoping when he graduated he would get a job and he would sponsor me just the way I sponsored him. For 3 years when he graduated, no work.
Wow.
And so I was all by myself in the university, no source of income. I was leaving UI to Lagos. There is a place they call Costain.
Yeah, I know Costain, yeah.
Now, what gave that name Costain was that this company they call Costain, then in Lagos, was building high-rise structures in that area. So the company was the most prominent thing in that area. So that's why that area is still related. That's why they call it Costain.
Oh, wow.
I was going to do many jobs, carrying block from floor to floor while I was in the university.
Wow.
That's area. And I would do the work for about a week or two, get some cash, dash back to school. In fact, there was a time in my year 3, the school wrote to check my file and found out that my same brother was my next of kin.
Wow. And
they wrote to him that this young man is a first-class material, but he's hardly in school. If you can keep him in school, he would have done well, but he's hardly in school. But I knew why I was not in school. I had to fend for myself.
Wow. And
by his grace, when I was in final year, which was 1991, my brother got a job. And he was able to support me to finish, to be able to do my project and all of that. But from year 1 to year 4, I saw hell. And when I was in year 3, the second semester of year 3, I was in Costain one time. I just made up my mind that I will not go back to school again. That the stress was too much. But then, that vision that I used to see, I saw it again. And I asked myself, what if I don't finish this school? I will not be able to sit on this seat that God kept showing me. So I had to, I just have to do it, no matter what. And that vision kept inspiring me. And I was able to graduate. And then when I graduated, I did youth service in Akure, Ondo State. And while I was doing youth service, I was applying. You know, there was this thing we used to call Free Readers Association. Yes. I go to a vendor stand, pick the newspaper, glance through with my biro, yes, and paper. I will copy the adverts and the advertisement for vacancies.
Wow.
And when I get to the room, I will write application. I did several applications. Then I had a colleague in the flatmate then, Okon, who would tell me, why do you like to waste your time? In Nigeria, you need to know somebody to get a job. Oh. I told him, I said, well, you may be right, but I found out from the vendor how much does it cost to do this newspaper advert. And he told me it cost a lot of money. So why would the companies be spending such monies if they didn't need people? That was my reasoning. And as luck would have it, by the time I finished youth service, I had several interview letters that people that responded, all those PO box that I was writing to, they responded. And I went for some of the interviews and I got my first job with Socotech Nigeria Limited. I didn't know it was Socotech. It was PO box something, and then they replied me and invited me for an interview. I did that interview on the 24th day of December, 1993.
That was a long time ago.
Yes. And before 7th of January, I had letter of employment from that company. Well, the salary was something else, 800 naira, but then I had a job, okay? And I didn't know one person. I remember at that interview, we did the greeting interview with lots of people, and then we had break, and then by the time we came back from the break, they had marked, and they called out about 20 of us out of over 200 and something people, and then we now the second part of the interview was the oral. When it was my turn, I entered the hall, and I faced a panel of about 7 people. But the middle seat was empty. There were people sitting here. The middle seat was higher. And then while I sat there, a big man, with the sense of the word big, literally speaking, it was the president of that company then, Chris Ogoro, engineer Chris Ogoro. I don't ever forget that man. He walked in wearing flowing white agbada and sat on the middle. They were asking me several questions, but the man asked me one question. He looked at me and said, "Young man, I have one question for you." And he said, "Imagine yourself as a site engineer, and you need to lay a cable on a site, construction site, but you don't have any measuring instruments. How can you ensure that you lay that cable on a straight line?" I looked at it, sir, I've not worked before. So he said, no, just answer the question. And then I knew that I didn't require site experience, because they knew that I had not worked before. I was just fresh from the university. I knew I didn't require site experience to answer that question. And so I thought a little. I said, "Yes, I know it." Then I stood up. He said, "No, sit down." I said, "No, sir, I want to stand up." And I stood up and I told him that, yes, I can lay that cable on a straight line. I'll pick one end of that cable, I'll fix it to the point where I want to start laying the cable from. And at the other end of the cable, I will attach a weight and allow that object swing. And when it swings like a pendulum, it comes to a rest. And at that point where it comes to a rest, I pin it. It's a straight line. The man just packed his files and moved out. And at the door, I want him.
Wow.
Okay? And that was how I got that job. And
Great.
I got that job. From there, I moved on to work in NETCO, National Engineering and Technical Company in Lagos. From there, I moved on to work in a design company in Lagos, BHA & Co. And from there, I moved on to England, where I worked in a design firm, Granham. We designed the Belema gas injection project for Shell.
Wow.
And I was there in a year with about 6 engineers. And then when I came back, had openings here and there, worked in Dresser Kellogg Energy Services, all in the private sector, and also eventually got a job with Bonny Allied Industries in Port Harcourt, makers of rock cement as at that time.
So, sir, at what point did NDDC come into this picture?
Yeah, we're coming to that. So I started my career in the private sector.
Okay.
So all these companies I've mentioned, they're all in the private sector.
Yeah.
And I worked in Bonny Allied Industries. As a matter of fact, I'll just use 1 minute to explain how I got to work in Bonny Allied Industries.
Okay.
When we finished the design of the Belema gas injection plant in England, in a town called Woking in Surrey. The county is Surrey and the town is Woking. Now, when we finished that design, we were 6 Nigerian engineers that participated in it. And they were a project team comprised of mainly white people, British young engineers. The project manager was also British. And so we now did a road show to talk about the lessons learned on that project. And so I was the lead engineer on the Nigerian side. And so in the presentation we had during that roadshow, which we had sometime in September of 1997, I was the one that anchored the presentation for the Nigerian side. Okay, and there was an audience, and we were making the presentation. I had this PowerPoint, and I explained what the Belema gas injection plant design was, and what role we played as engineers from Nigeria, young engineers from Nigeria, and some of the lessons we learned. When we finished the presentation, it was an ovation, you know, and then people came out naturally to congratulate me, to talk to me, and most of them were British white people. And then one burly guy, huge, big guy, white guy, approached me and told me, nice presentation, and gave me his card. And I thanked him, and I looked at the card. It was written, Chief Colin Dixon, MD, Managing Director, Eastern Bulk Sem Company, Port Harcourt, Rumulumeni, Port Harcourt, Nigeria. Now, what was interesting to me was the fact that he's a white guy, but he called himself Chief. Chief Colin Dixon. So I kept that card. Because he told me, whenever you come to Nigeria, give me a call. This was in September.
Okay.
Then I came back to Nigeria in December, early December. And then by late that Christmas period, I traveled to the East to visit a friend of mine for Christmas. And we had Christmas, and after Christmas, we came to Port Harcourt with him because he lives in Port Harcourt. And then there was a tournament that day, of golf tournament, and then they had a get-together in the evening. And at the golf course, the reception area, guess who I saw? Ooh. This same Colin Dixon that gave me his card in the UK in September. He was the president of the golf section of the Port Harcourt Club.
The chief? The
chief, yes. So I told my friend, Austin Wanchuku, Honorable Austin Wanchuku, then he was not the honorable, but he eventually went to the House of Reps. And I said, I know him. I went to my car and brought the card. I said, this man, he said, how did you get this card? I said, the man gave me the card in England.
Wow. And
I told him what happened. So, okay, don't worry, we'll go and see him the next day. And the next day was Sunday. After service, we went to see the man in his house. Immediately he saw me. Yeah, you are that bright engineer. Come.
Wow.
And the next thing he said, I want you to come work for me. I'm the current MD of Eagle Cement, but I'm building a cement company of my own. I want you to be a foundation staff. And the next thing I went to for an interview with some consultants, and after that they offered me a job. And the salary they offered me was twice the salary I was earning as at that time in Lagos.
Wow. So
I went to the company. So I worked there from 1998 all the way to 2001. 2001, I was in the office one day. This was not how I came to NDDC. I was in the office one day, and the office I had in Rock Cement was about 1/3 of the office I used to see in my vision in terms of size.
Yeah.
So it was getting closer.
Wow.
Okay. And I saw the newspaper that day, like now, I normally get newspaper.
Yes.
So as I went through the newspaper, I saw a caption, Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, hiring. It was an advert for vacancies. Yes. So I looked at it, and then I just made 10 years post-graduation, 2001. I left university in 1991. This was 2001. And the advert was, there were positions, the positions were assistant director, deputy director, and director. And the minimum qualification for the assistant director was graduate, 10 years. So I just barely met it, so I responded. And I was invited for an interview by Dilute and Touch. It's a consulting company, you know it, and the interview held in a place in Port Harcourt, can't remember the name now, and I went for that interview, and then I didn't hear anything again after some time. Then The following year, around September, I got a call, a telephone call on my mobile phone. That is that Engineer Emmanuel Audu? I said, yes. I said, well, this is one Pamela calling from NDDC. That can you please report to the office of the MD? I said, yes, I will come. And so I went. And the MD then was a very distinguished Yoruba man, Engineer Dr Emmanuel, who was Deputy MD of Shell. Quintessential engineer, fine gentleman. So I saw him and he told me, are you this? He was looking at a list of people who were successful in that interview. My name was number 3 on that list. Wow. I said, okay. So where are you from? And I told him I was on the road. I said, very, very, very brilliant. Okay, so you've been offered employment, so you report to the office of the director, project monitoring, and then the letters and everything. So I went, and the rest is history. But something to let you know, which is now one of my major reasons for granting you this interview. Yes. The decision to go to the public sector, which is NDDC, was something I thought about and deliberately made, even though the odds were against me. When I went to the Director of Project Monitoring, he interviewed me, and next thing I was given a letter after about 4 weeks. It was October 2002. When I read the letter, I took time. When I went to the remunerations, all the total emoluments in a month was less than 80,000 naira.
My God.
And my appointment was principal manager, which was level 14, project monitoring and supervision. As at that time, as the manager of projects in Bonny Allied Industries, my basic salary in a month was 350,000 naira.
Amazing.
And so, how can I live where I'm being paid 350,000 naira to go and work in a place to be collecting 80,000 naira? So I thought it wasn't a good thing. I thought it over and over. And then my brother, bless him, came into the scene and he called me to congratulate me. And I told him, yes, but I don't think I will do the job. He said, why? I said, because. He said, you won't do what? I said, it's okay. He hung the phone. The next day I saw him in Port Harcourt. Came to my house. And he said, what is this you are saying? I said, well, look, I can't do the job because, look, I already have family, my children, my wife. I was building a house. I was doing so many things, you know. I can't cope. He told me, no, that I will be coming to work for government. I will be able to get to a position one day where I'll be able to help people. I'll be able to help communities, help humanity. Well, why should I? That he knows me, that if I take the job, he knows that the money might not be, but he knows me. I will always look for something else to do to, you know. And so I slept on it, and the next day I made up my mind. I had not resigned from Rock Cement before. So after that conversation with my brother, the next day I went to Rock Cement and put in my letter of resignation and took the NDDC job. And here we are